welcome to Uncovered. Welcome to Wednesday. I'm Anthony Davis, and he is Ron Filipkowski, and together we uncover the MAGA propaganda that is not covered by the mainstream media. Is it me, or are we seeing Ellen Doyle's message under there on top of the show? I don't know. It seems to be.
Yeah, I see it there.
We'll welcome Ellen as
a message with nothing in it. Okay.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? We'll welcome Ellen as a special guest into the show as a kind of co-host.
That's our cry on now.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we've got lots to talk about today. I think we should mention that there is a potential Kamala Harris VP pick that we will maybe give an exclusive on in just a little while, but I want to start with the news that Donald Trump has literally, as we started this show pretty much about half an hour ago, finished his interview with black journalists at the NABJ conference. And it was one of the weirdest things, you know, 3 black journalists on the stage, Donald Trump sitting there abusing and being aggressive and, you know, just weird. I mean, weird is obviously the word of the moment, but just so strange hearing all of this stuff. I got a few clips of it. Just you start us off with what we should be thinking about this right now.
Well, to begin with, this whole thing was very controversial. Just the fact that he was invited was controversial. There were many members of the organization that felt like he should not be invited, but he was, and he ultimately accepted the invitation. And so there was that. He showed up late. He claimed he wasn't late. He claimed that the problem was with the microphones. And throughout the entire presentation, he constantly complained that he couldn't hear or the microphones were bad, which he does every single Trump rally. So amazingly, everywhere he goes, the mics don't work, and the, you know, or there's something wrong with him. The one common denominator is him. But everywhere he goes, supposedly there's technical problems that are other people's fault, including today. So it kind of started off badly right there because he's late. People are saying he's late. A lot of people don't even want him there to begin with. He shows up, and then, you know, he's got the one panelist on there who's Harris Faulkner, who is just a full-on Trump cultist.
From Fox News, yeah.
Yeah, just loves Trump, all in on Trump. And, you know, she was there to kind of soak up a lot of the time and ask him softball questions and things like that. But every time he got a question from one of the other 2 journalists, it was a disaster. It was just a complete disaster. He was and here's part of the problem. Part of the problem is 3 black women asking him questions.
Yeah.
And you know, he's fine with Harris, but the other 2, you know, and he can't handle that. He just cannot handle ever being asked serious questions or pinned down or talked to in a professional way by black women. He can't handle it. Pretty much all women, but black women even more so. And so you saw that. He was hostile. He was nasty right from the beginning to them. And it just came out. His answers were totally unhinged. You know, we can go through the clips one by one, but yeah, you know, these are the moments really when I wish very badly that everyone in America could see him, because I know so many people have not seen this kind of stuff because local news doesn't put this stuff on. You know, a lot network news doesn't put the crazy stuff on, and they need to, because I really believe that if people could see what we're about to see in these clips, there's no way they would vote for him.
This is the real Trump. You know, I often talk about how he tempers himself publicly. Occasionally it slips out, like, I don't care about you, I just want your votes. Yep. He is at heart, he is a self-absorbed racist, and we're about to see that now.
If I came onto a stage like this and I got treated so rudely as this woman treated me, oh my goodness. And I'm fine with it because she was very rude, sir. Very rude. That wasn't a question. She didn't ask me a question. She gave a statement. That wasn't a question.
I repeated your statement.
If he's fine with it, Ron, why is he having a problem with it? It's so weird.
He's not fine with it. I mean, this is what you know whose voice we heard at the beginning? Harris Faulkner. Yeah. Even Harris Faulkner, the Trump fan who loves Trump, who, as a Fox News host, said, "Oh my goodness." She was shocked at what he said. And that wasn't that was only just one example of like 100 that he was only up there for like 45 minutes. Then, by the way, he got a question about Project 2025, and the Trump campaign pulled the plug on it and said, no, we're done. So
let's see another one of these clips. Here it is.
I didn't notice ABC doing any publicity on it, George.
We covered you extensively, sir. I'd love to move over on to different topics.
I didn't notice you do any publicity on it at all. I won the case, the biggest case. This is an attack on a political opponent. I have another one where I have a hostile judge.
We have you for a limited time, sir. I'd love to move on to different topics.
Excuse you. You're the one that held me up for 35 minutes, just so you understand.
First of all,
he's a piece of work, isn't he? I can't really get over it. You know, was the initial hostility, because, you know, with Trump, like if he doesn't like something, it turns him. Was there like lateness at the beginning or something that meant that he was in a bad mood when he hit the deck?
Yes. I'll answer that. First of all,
okay.
Let me just say this.
Yeah.
That question, what he was just answering right there, was a question about qualified immunity for police officers.
Right.
And he was talking about Judge Cannon instead of answering that question because he doesn't know anything about his own policy. He starts talking about Judge Cannon dismissing his case and asking and complaining that ABC did not cover that enough. That was his answer to a question about police immunity.
That was the George Sloppolopoulos thing.
Yeah. So yes, the answer to the question is he showed up late, and I followed his plane and his car on social media. He was late,
right?
Even though he's lying. Yeah. And then he was backstage. So I guess he was minimum 35 minutes late. But then some reporters were tweeting that the event was starting an hour late, that Trump was late. He was complaining on social media that he was waiting backstage to go out, but they had audio problems. It's weird. They didn't appear to have any audio problems for anything else, but that's his excuse. So apparently he had to stand backstage for a good 20 minutes waiting to come out. So maybe, at that point he knew that it was a hostile crowd. He probably was a little pissed off at his own people for scheduling this, just like what happened with the Libertarian convention when he was booed off stage. This campaign is just an incompetent mess. Why they try and come out with, oh, he was so brave to go to these hostile environments. That's not the point of a presidential campaign. You're supposed to put yourself in a position to look good, not to look like a fool.
And that's really the whole issue with Republicans, MAGA Republicans generally, is that they will never expose themselves to regular media who would ask questions that they consider tough. They only go into safe spaces. Obviously, there's so many of these far-right news channels now, from Fox and Newsmax and One America. There's a whole bunch of them. There's like 7 or 8 now that I see on the EPG, and I'm like, they seem to be growing, like these propaganda channels. And so whenever Trump is in an environment where he feels uncomfortable, he aside from the lateness thing, he is sitting there with clenched buttocks, and he's entirely uncomfortable because he knows that he's not surrounded by sycophants as he is in his day-to-day life.
And they were trying to ask him serious policy questions.
Yeah.
And he can't answer those questions. So he resorts to personal insults, rambling, fuming, the kind of stuff that he does on Fox, but they're perfectly happy to let him just do it. They'll just sit there and let him ramble for 10 minutes, and then they'll go to the next question and say, oh, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, sir. He's not used to a journalist going, wait a minute, that's not my question. My question was about police immunity, not about Judge Cannon. He's not used to that. So when that happens, he freaks out.
Let's look at the police immunity question, because this is about January 6th and him saying, I'm going to pardon all the January 6ers. And, he has a policy where he says that the police should be immune from prosecution, which, is just insane. But the other thing I thought was interesting about this is that he's always pushing for toughness. You've got to be tough. The law has to be tough. Judges should be tough. Sentences should be tough. And then see what his answer is when he talks about the January 6 defendants.
When Time magazine asked you if you would consider pardoning all the rioters, you said, yes, absolutely. Sure. You called them patriots. 140 police officers were assaulted that day. Their injuries included broken bones. At least one officer lost an eye. One had 2 cracked ribs, 2 smashed spinal discs. Another had a stroke. 140 officers, including those I just mentioned, patriots who deserve pardons?
Well, let me bring it back to modern day. Like about 5 days ago, we had an attack on the Capitol, a horrible attack on the Capitol. You saw the people that were protesting and spraying these incredible monuments, bells, lions, all these magnificent limestone and granite with red paint, red spray paint, that will never actually come off, especially in the limestone. It will never, I'm a builder, I know about this stuff. It'll never, you'll see it in 100 years from now. They viciously attacked our government. They fought with police. They fought with them much more openly than I saw on January 6th. What's going to happen to those people? What's going to happen to the people in Portland that destroyed that city?
But sir, my question is on those.
What's going to happen to the people that tried to bring
rioters who assaulted officers?
You have to
would you pardon
what's
those
going to
people?
happen? Oh, absolutely, I would.
You would pardon those?
If they're innocent, I would pardon them.
They've been convicted.
And by the way, the Supreme Court just well, they were convicted by a very tough.
Very tough system, yeah. The same tough that he advocates for. The guy is spiraling, isn't he? I mean, not just this event, but so many things. He is really losing his mind because he knows that Republicans are on the back foot.
You know, so many of these things, like I wait so long for somebody to ask questions like this of Trump.
Yeah.
And I watch all these Trump appearances and all these Trump interviews on Fox and News and even on other things. And I get so freaking frustrated that there are just some basic, simple questions that need to be asked of this man that never are. And here you have a journalist who asks one of those questions, which is, he said many times he wants to pardon the J6ers. I have wanted someone, anyone, to ask him, does that include the people convicted of beating and injuring cops? No one has ever asked him that question. Nobody on Fox, nobody on Newsmax. It seems to be a relevant question. And what does he do? He talks about the protests of that happened last week in D.C. and says that those were worse than January 6th.
Yeah. He is, you know, I think in these, I think I may have said it last week, but in these final 98 days between now and the election, he is going to become more extreme with his language. He is going to become more critical. He is going to become more abusive and more racist and more misogynistic by nature of the fact that he hates pressure. He hates that ticking clock. He sees that election day and he is genuinely worried that it's not going to go the way he is hoping. And, you know, we're seeing the wheels starting to come off.
Yeah, and he says the reason why they're sorry.
I know you're a bit emotional, and I understand it's a very touchy subject.
Frustrating.
I get it. Yeah, I get it.
So at the very end, which got cut off a little bit there, what he said was that his rationale for pardoning these people who were convicted by juries of beating cops is because all of their trials were unfair. That's why, you know, now, did he watch any of them? No. Does he know anything about them? No. He just says all those juries were unfair and all those hundreds of trials. And so he's just going to pardon all of them, you know.
In the same way that he
thankfully he was pinned down on that because nobody else has pinned him down on that question.
But even the lie that he tells about, like, on day one, I'm going to close the border. You can't close the border. You just can't do it.
Can't do it.
So the fact that he keeps saying it and there's never been any journalistic pushback proves that there's no journalism, right? That's kind of what it comes down to.
Yep. I mean, we have asylum laws. He tried once to do an executive order to prevent people from crossing and making asylum applications, and a federal judge threw that out. So,
but it's his major policy.
He can't even do that.
It's his major policy pledge, closing the border on day one, and it's illegal. And yet America just carries on, news media just carries on.
Yeah.
It's like this is the candidate who claims that he's going to save America, and his major policy is an illegal one, and no one's talking about it. It's like, Ron, what's going on, my friend?
So what's our border, like 2,000 miles long? But so the question would be, how are you going to do that? You're going to put the entire United States military, pull all of our troops from overseas and station them on? That's the only way to do it. And even then, it would be hard. Yeah. And then number two, are you just going to take the asylum laws passed by Congress that are on the books and ignore them and just say, I'm just not going to recognize these laws? And then when the courts say you have to, you're going to ignore the courts? Like, let's pin him down on some of this stuff, guys.
Yeah. Let's look at this post that he put on Truth Social. I've noticed Truth Social just reported some more monthlies or something, or 3 monthlies, and usage is down again. So, that is quite a good barometer for the popularity of the MAGA Republicans, and usage is down. And even when Trump posts, I mean, this post only got 1.17 thousand retruths. 1,000 retweets, effectively. He said, why is Fox News putting on crazy Kamala Harris rallies? Why do they allow the perverts at the failed and disgraced Lincoln Project to advertise on Fox News? Even Mr. Kellyanne Conway, a man so badly hurt and humiliated by his wife, she must have done some really nasty things to him because he is crazy, is advertising on Fox News. We have to win without Fox. Now, this is very telling. He's referring to George Conway, of course. George Conway has just started this new PAC talking about his mental health and saying that he's unfit for office, and is obviously buying advertising on Fox, which is great. But Donald Trump, is, again, this adds to this point that I'm making, that from all sides, he feels like he is starting to lose ground, and he doesn't like it. Yeah.
There's 4 parts to the crazy of that.
Okay.
Part number 1 is, how he likes to give everybody a nickname, like Crooked Joe Biden or, Hillary, he's got all these little names.
Yeah. Laughing Kamala Harris.
Right. But now he's tried out all the different names, Ron DeSanctimonious. Yeah. And now he's settled on Crazy Kamala. That's his thing now. That's what he's going to call her from here on out. And the thing is, like, if I was his campaign advisor and I was like trying to come up with things to say about Kamala Harris, like, crazy would not be it. I mean, I could come up with other critiques of her for him if I was doing that, if I was in the business of doing that. But crazy would not be it, because she's not crazy. She's clearly not crazy. Yeah. And it only makes him look more ridiculous because he is obviously crazy. Yeah. So when a crazy person is calling a pretty sane, normal person crazy, it just makes you look even crazier. That's number 1. Number 2 is, yes, Lincoln Project figured this out back in 2020, and now other people are doing it too, which is they know that he watches Fox 24/7. All he does is watch Fox all day long and all night. So when they want to get in his pea brain and rattle him, they just run an ad on one of his favorite shows, Fox and Friends or Hannity. So, Lincoln Project ran an ad saying he's mentally, he's a whiny crybaby. And then George Conway's PAC ran their ad, which was hilarious, that he's mentally ill. And their PAC has employed actual psychiatrists.
That's right. Yeah, Dr. John Gartner is part of it. Yeah.
So he's watching these ads and he's just furious and he's fuming. And then so that's the second and third part is he hates Conway, of course, and he hates Lincoln Project. Then you get to the end and he's mad at Fox. I mean, he's basically just threatening Fox, saying, you should not allow anybody to advertise anything on your network that is critical of me. Because this is supposed to be like state TV, right? It's supposed to be Trump TV.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to put anybody Putin on that's going to criticize him.
Yeah. I hate to say that I am taking pleasure from watching him unravel in this way, because this is how it should have been in 2016 and in 2022. And I think that people now really do recognize the threat. There's so much more talk about Project 2025, despite Trump wanting to distance himself, and Kamala Harris is talking about it now. whereas a couple of years ago when we first started mentioning it, people couldn't really get their head around what it was. But now it's starting to make sense that all of these aspects to what the Republicans have planned for a second Trump presidency are not benefiting anybody, even the MAGA Republican base. And so I think that, Trump is realizing this, which is why he tried to distance himself from Project 2025. And
yeah, well, here's the thing. When he says, like, I don't even know what's in it.
Yeah.
That I believe. Okay, because he has never read it, of course. But that's not the issue. The issue is the people that he's going to put in power know very well what's in it and intend to implement it, and he's going to let them implement it.
Well, because he's the front man. He's just a useful idiot.
Yeah.
And he has never read anything. He's never written anything. He is the kind of guy who relies on other people doing the work and him just showing up and doing the publicity stunt, the photo op, that kind of stuff. And so tragically, he's doing that with the United States of America. I mean, the only work that he's actually done that I can think of is giving nicknames to people he doesn't like. Like, that's the only thing that he kind of inspires, is coming up with a nickname. And isn't that crazy that's what we're
critiquing TV shows too?
Yeah.
He does that.
He's just
that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And play golf.
He should have been a TV critic or stayed as a host.
Sure.
Let's look at this Project 2025 announcement from the Trump campaign, which basically tried to, they say the campaign has been very clear for over a year that Project 2025 has nothing to do with the campaign, did not speak for the campaign, should not be associated with the campaign or the president in any way. Reports of Project 2025's demise would be greatly welcomed and should serve as notice to anyone or group trying to misrepresent their influence with President Trump and his campaign. It will not end well for you. Now, this in sharp contrast, of course, to the reality that Donald Trump has been filmed multiple times thanking the Heritage Foundation for writing the Mandate for Leadership, titled Project 2025, saying it will form the basis of the Trump administration and then their policies. He's photographed with Kevin Roberts hanging out together. So what they've done to try and deal with this in the last 24 hours is fire one of the guys who was not really running this project, was just part of the team, and scapegoated him, used him as an excuse to give the impression that Project 2025 in some way is winding down, which is completely untrue.
Yeah. So here's, really one of the main purposes of the show is to kind of read between the lines and tell you what's really going on here, because in politics, you rarely get the straight, honest truth about what's really going on. I mean, and you can figure this out if you watch the whole timeline and watch the moving parts. So here's what happened. Project 25 is out there. It's swimming around. Trump doesn't say a word about it. Nobody says a word about it. Then the media gets a hold of it. It gets out in the public. The public starts breaking it down and looking at it and recoils and is disgusted by what's in there. It starts polling like crazy. It's hurting Trump. Then he comes out and disavows it, right? I don't know anything about it. I don't know anything. So here's what happened. And this is what's really driving what you just saw on the screen, his statement, which is a lot of right-wingers love Project 2025. They were all in, and influencers and Trump supporters, and they were a little baffled. They're like, what's going on here? Why is he disavowing this plan? We love this plan. And so they were a little bit mystified. Some of them were pushing back a little bit, like, what is Trump doing? And then what happened is Kevin Roberts starts going on TV and saying, basically, like, look, man, he knew what was in this plan. I don't know why he's trashing us right now. This is kind of dumb. And then that made Trump even more pissed off. And that's when you see in the last line of that statement by La Savita. And that's, La Savita put Susie Wiles's name in there with his. She had nothing to do with this statement. This is all from Chris La Savita, 100%. He does not like these people. And I mean, I'm not saying he doesn't like Project 2025, the policies. He doesn't like the people. And so this is a rivalry between them where Chris, Jason Miller, Wiles, they want sole control over Trump, right? And they don't want any outside group or influencer to have any sway over him. And this is a turf war between these people. And so what is happening there is that statement is La Savita gloating that he was able to get this guy fired. That he doesn't.
We should mention it's Paul Dans who was effectively fired. He's actually not been fired. He's relocated within Project 2025. And Kevin Roberts, who's the president of the Heritage Foundation, is now saying, well, I'm now going to take control. Well, he was always in control. So nothing has really changed at all.
Symbolic. Yeah. But here's the screw up yet again, why this campaign is so stupid.
Yeah.
Is because actually, with all the other shit going on in the news with Kamala and everything else, the Project 2025 stuff had just finally started to die down.
Right.
It was out of the news cycle. Nobody had talked about it for like 5 days. And what do? Boom, they put it right back into the news cycle. These people are idiots.
Yeah. Well, nobody is questioning that fact, Ron. We are all in agreement.
Yeah. So for nothing, they got nothing out of doing this. Nothing. Nobody believed, oh, this guy was fired, so that must mean Trump doesn't have anything to do with it. Nobody believes that. So they got nothing out of it, and they put it back in the news. I mean, it's the gang that can't shoot straight right now.
Let's talk about this this video that's been circulating that, we've obviously been putting out on Midas Touch about Trump saying you don't have to vote. You don't, or get out and vote. He's talking to the Christians. That's right. He was in a kind of at a was it a Turning Point event or something? And
it was specifically a Christian event.
It was a Christian event, right?
Yeah,
and he's like, he was like, you have to get out and vote. You won't have to do it anymore. 4 years, it'll be fixed. It'll be fine. You won't have to vote anymore. In 4 years, you won't have to vote again. I mean, he said it multiple times. It wasn't like it was a slip of the tongue. Now, fortunately, this is ricocheting around the media because this is a very, very important moment when we try to describe Donald Trump as a despot and as a dictator and as an authoritarian, and people don't quite get it and say, oh, he's only joking. This is really what he means. And again, when he's caught, he's slightly off kilter, the truth really, really comes out. I'll play the clip and then we can discuss it a little more.
And again, Christians, get out and vote just this time. You won't have to do it anymore. 4 more years, you know what? It'll be fixed. It'll be fine. You won't have to vote anymore, my beautiful Christians. I love you, Christians. I'm a Christian. I love you. Get out. You got to get out and vote. In 4 years, you don't have to vote again. We'll have it fixed so good you're not going to have to vote.
Unfortunately, a lot of people focused on the wrong bit of that video. They focused on him saying, I'm a Christian or I'm not a Christian, because it wasn't clear. I think he was saying, I'm a Christian.
Yeah, he was.
Right.
That's just how he talked. It was his accent or whatever.
Yeah.
He wasn't saying I'm not a Christian. And I saw some people clip that and quote, hey, look,
stupid.
I do have a little bit of a problem that sometimes people who are now in this clipping business all of a sudden are reaching with their and misleading in their captions, and they're losing a little credibility. And I won't name them, but there's some prominent accounts. And I have tried to tell them, stop doing that, because you're losing credibility and people are going to stop watching the clips.
Well, they rush to be first, and in the process of being first,
they want it to be hot.
They miss the facts here. That there's no way why, if he's at a Christian Turning Point event, why he would say I'm not a Christian.
He was saying I'm a Christian, and it sounded like you could interpret it. Well, maybe he didn't say I'm not a Christian. Okay, look. There's plenty that we can pick apart here with Trump. Yeah. We don't need to be dishonest.
Yeah.
But we have the last part. So here's what you can do with all of these kinds of statements, whether it's blood of the country, dictator for a day, whatever you want to say. You either can take him at his word, literally. You can listen to what he says and says what he says is what he means. Or you can do like a lot of news media does and try and interpret it. Oh, well, no. He really didn't mean that crazy thing. Really, this is what he was saying. And they try to explain it away. And they try to give him, and you know what he does, by the way? He watches that stuff.
Yeah.
He'll watch a CNN reporter go, well, this is what I think Trump.
And then it gives him ideas.
And then he comes out and says, yes, that's what I meant.
That's what I meant.
It happens all the time.
Well, it happened when he was president.
Bailing him out time and time again.
It used to happen when he got out of Marine One every time, and he did that thing where he didn't have anything to say, and so questions would come from the journalists, and they'd be like, "Are you thinking of doing this?" And you could see his brain being "Oh, that's a good idea."
Good. Yeah.
And it's like, stop feeding this guy.
Yeah. So when he's saying, you're not going to look, has anybody ever asked him, if you win this election, will you step down in 4 years? Has anybody ever asked him, do you understand that under the Constitution, you can only do one term if you win? And do you understand that and agree with that? Nobody's ever asked him that simple question. And you know what? You're going to be surprised at his answer, because he's not going to give you a simple yes answer to that. He's going to go, well, we'll have to take a look at that.
Yes.
We'll have to see what happens.
Well, because he looks at Putin. He looks at Putin, who's now done 23 consecutive years, and thinks that would be good for him too.
And here's the problem. Journalists don't think of asking that question because they assume, well, any normal person is going to say, oh, yes, I understand that. But Donald Trump is not a normal person.
And this is not a normal race. So you can't ask the standard questions that you might ask regular candidates.
Yes,
exactly. You have
right.
to.
Yeah. And so let's get back to, so what is he saying?
Yeah. So
is he saying he's not going to have an election in 4 years? Well, he very well might be saying exactly that. And I don't give him the benefit of the doubt.
No.
I don't just assume, oh no, what was some of the interpretations I saw from the media? What he really meant. What he really meant was, oh no, he's just saying that the country is going to be so good and he's going to be so popular that his successor will not need all of the MAGA people to vote because he'll have so many other votes enough to win. This is like a media interpretation of Trump. It's like, why are you doing this for him? Take him at his word, listen to what he says, report what he says. Don't try and be his lawyer.
And he's also saying it to a Christian audience because he's been given data that the Christians, whichever group I do not know, are not traditional voters. They don't necessarily all go out and vote. So he's been given messaging, get out there and convince the Christians that they have to vote because we need all these votes. And so he's interpreted that in his own way. And then he's giving them this argument, well, you don't normally vote, so you will never have to vote again. Just vote this one time, and then I'll install myself.
That's another interpretation,
forever.
Which is that the poll. A lot of data does show that many rural evangelicals don't vote.
Yeah.
Okay. So, you could take that interpretation that what he's saying is, I know a lot of you people never vote, but you need to show up and vote for me once, and then you can go back to not voting again. Yeah. Okay. But here's the problem. You are correct. It was a event for pastors, but it was sponsored by Turning Point.
Yeah.
Everyone in that room votes. Right. Everyone in that room is an activist.
They're activists. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, we're always looking to try and find the sane, rational explanation behind the plain meaning of the word. And let's take that for a second. I thought conservatives who are strict constructionists said you have to follow the plain meaning of words in the Constitution and the law and strictly adhere to the words. But in Donald Trump, that doesn't apply. We have to look for the kinder, softer meaning behind what he's really saying.
I just want to put in a bit of a curveball here. This is some reporting that Rachel Maddow did on Monday night. I actually put out a video Monday daytime about this. Rolling Stone did an article about it on Tuesday. And this is that Trump actually has a plan, because this slightly contradicts you've got to get out and vote scenario. And the plan is that he already has in place in swing states, Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania, at least 70 pro-Trump election conspiracists who are currently working as county election officials who've questioned the validity of elections previously or delayed or refused to certify results. And at least 22 of them have refused or delayed certification in previous elections. And so the analysis that I've kind of been putting together, because Ron, I couldn't understand why he didn't seem to be electioneering that much. He wasn't doing rallies and, he was playing a lot of golf and taking it easy. And I was thinking he doesn't seem to have that much fight in him. And so then I heard Kevin Roberts say this thing about, oh, well, we have a secret plan at the Heritage Foundation and Project 2025, and the Democrats don't know what it is, but, you know, they're going to be surprised. And then I do this discovery about these, you know, these legislatures, and I'm thinking this is going to be a repeat of the year 2000 with Bush versus Gore, where they effectively refuse to certify the results in these swing states. It ends up at the Supreme Court because that's a MAGA court now. We know that from the immunity case and Chevron and everything else. And they will then find the election in favor of Donald Trump. Do you think this is a plausible theory?
I mean, first of all, a lot of those people, you know, there was some critical Secretary of State races around the country. And we're not talking about local people now. We're talking about people who run the whole state that we had to win. There were conspiracy theorists in every one of those races, and we had to win all six swing states. And we won all 6 in 2022. So that was hugely important because those are the people that have oversight over the people you're talking about, the local people. So yes, do I put it past some of these local nut jobs in supervisor of elections office who have just been elected, who are Trumpy, to pull some shenanigans? Anything's possible. But I will say also that a lot of them are not in the swing states. You know, a lot of these people are in Alabama, Mississippi, where it's, you know, let them cheat all they want. I mean, I'm not saying to let them cheat, but if they do cheat, it's not really going to matter, right? It's really only matters in certain key places. And I got to believe, and I hope, and I think this is true, that both those secretaries of states in those states who won those elections in 2022 are going to be keeping a very close eye on those people. And so is the Harris campaign.
Yeah, because, you know, it needs to be policed. And I don't put anything past Donald Trump, but, you know, you and I have talked about the Supreme Court. Oh, they'll never overturn Roe. They'll never find him in favor, you know, give him immunity. They did both. And so it is, I am very distrusting of the Supreme Court, especially with Samuel Alito. And we've been hearing about him and his wife and the flags and Clarence Thomas being bought and paid for by Harlan Crow and his mother's house and goodness knows what else. Oh, and Ginny Thomas, of course, he's married to an insurrectionist. So, you know, I don't trust that the Supreme Court wouldn't, as they did in the year 2000 with George W. Bush, you know, making the final decision. Because, you know, Kamala Harris will win the popular vote as Democratic presidents have. I think only one time did a Republican win the popular vote. Wasn't that George W. Bush's second go?
Yeah, one time in like 30 years. Yeah,
and that was after 9/11 or something, right?
Yep. Since 1988, yeah, that's the only time. Correct.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it, that, you know, that there are multiple versions of America. And you know, there's the popular vote and electoral college. And I think that people forget that the popular vote absolutely is the way to really count the election, because that's true democracy.
Because the problem is, like, 40 states don't matter. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like the people who vote in California know, really, their vote doesn't really matter that much. I mean, everybody should vote, okay, because the local races matter and all that. But the reality is, people in Alabama, people in California, that we already know how those states are going to vote. So we keep having these elections every 4 years where like 6 or 7 states decide everything for the rest of the country. And, you know, really, it's really unfortunate that the framers, the founders, the infallible, perfect founders created a system like this.
And that's why, you know, we've heard Joe Biden saying that in his final few months, he's looking to bring about change on the Supreme Court. He's looking at term limits of 18 years. But electoral reform is so important, isn't it? And that's something that I'm hoping that if Kamala Harris wins the election and is installed as president, of course, two different things, that she, unlike Joe Biden, who's very much a traditionalist, I think she is the reformer that maybe America needs right now.
Well, you know, yeah, but she's not really going to talk about being that much of a reformer, right?
Well, not now. No, I'm not talking about now in the lead up to the election. I'm saying once she wins the presidency, then she has the ability to do that. And
right now she's just saying, like, I'm normal.
Yeah.
And I'm saying,
look at the weirdo over there.
And I think that's smart.
So really the caveat, or not the caveat, the kind of closing point to this whole scenario, electoral college and the potential for these legislatures refusing to certify, is that it needs to be a landslide win for Kamala Harris. That everybody needs to vote. You need to encourage your neighbors to vote. You need to drag your friends who don't really take much interest to vote. Because if it's not a landslide, if it's so tight, that's what gives them the opportunity to say there's fraud. It needs to be seen by the courts. There needs to be recounts. Kamala Harris needs a good 20% win.
It needs to be a strong win. You're right. We can't have it come down to like 6,000 votes in Arizona. You know what I mean? Like that's a bad scenario. You're right. Okay. And I think the way things are going right now, I mean, hey, we still have a ways to go, but things are trending in that direction. If things keep going the way they've gone the last couple of weeks, that could happen.
Yeah. Anything could happen, Ron. Listen, we have to take a quick break, but I want to come back and talk about Kamala Harris's vice president pick. There's been a lot of speculation, especially on this show, but I think we may have an answer. That's next on Uncovered. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs and gives you a tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workouts, sleep, and even stress management. All you have to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. Then Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. You can also breathe into it before and after workouts and meals, so you know exactly what's going on in your body in real time. And Lumen will give you tips to keep you on top of your health game. Your metabolism is your body's engine. It's how your body turns the food you eat into the fuel that keeps you going. So, if you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me/uncovered to get 15% off your Lumen. That's lumen.me/uncovered for 15% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. Nobody likes using a cheap razor. That's why you've got to meet Henson Shaving. They're a family-owned aerospace parts manufacturer that has made parts for the ISS and Mars rover, and now they're bringing precision engineering to your shaving experience. If you're like 88% of men who experience irritation from shaving, you might be expecting the worst from each shave, yet Henson users have seen dramatic improvements. Henson Shaving's innovation comes from an interesting analogy. Think of razor blades as diving boards. The longer the board, the more it wobbles. The micro wobbles are what lead to more nicks and cuts. Henson solves this by minimizing blade extension, addressing the root cause of bad shaves. And it gets better. The razor has built-in channels to evacuate hair and cream, which makes clogging virtually impossible. The Henson razor works with standard dual-edge blades to give you that old-school shave with the benefits of new-school tech. Once you own a Henson razor, it's only about $3 to $5 a year to replace the blades. It's time to say no to subscriptions and yes to a razor that'll last you a lifetime. Visit hensonshaving.com/uncovered to pick the razor for you and use code UNCOVERED and you'll get 2 years worth of blades free with your razor. Just make sure to add them to your cart. That's 100 free blades when you head to hensonshaving.com/uncovered and use code UNCOVERED. And links to our sponsors can be found in the description below, as usual. Ron Filipkowski, our predictions for Kamala Harris's VP pick have ranged widely. You started with Elise Stefanik a few months ago. I was going with who was it? I was going with originally. I think Pete Buttigieg. But no, sorry. Hang on a second. We didn't have Kamala Harris back then as the leader, did we? So much has changed.
You were talking about Trump's.
We were talking about Trump's VP for Elise Stefanik. Okay, so now we have a new candidate on the Democrat side. So I think I just lost my mind for a moment.
Hard to keep up with it.
Yeah. Although if she did choose Elise Stefanik, that could be very interesting for everything. In fact, some people have been saying she should choose Liz Cheney.
Oh God, no.
But have you heard that suggestion?
I have not heard that, but no, the Democratic base would stay home.
No,
I mean,
I appreciate that, but it is interesting.
She's a good ally and everything, but
yeah,
no.
yeah. So anyway, so now we're down to Pete Buttigieg was suggested. I've been kind of pushing for him, and then I changed my mind for Mark Kelly. He's the astronaut, but people were saying, well, no, he's a senator, and you don't want to lose a Senate seat, so really it needs to be a governor. So where are we at now, Ron?
Here's the deal. Like, we don't know 100% who it is, but I can tell you like 95% we know. Okay. I mean, and we said this about Vance a week out when it was when all indications, all the signs, you could look at all the little barometer signs and they were all pointing Vance from like 7 days out.
Yes.
And it was Vance. Though all those same kind of barometer signs are all pointing at one person right now. And it looks pretty sure that this is going to be the person, and it's Josh Shapiro. I mean, it's the Pennsylvania governor, Josh Shapiro. The announcement is coming, I think, Tuesday, Monday. It's in Pennsylvania. It's in Philadelphia. You know, that's not 100% for sure, but you know, that the fact that it's in his state means he's going to get it. But look, they all had their tryouts. They all had their auditions.
They've all been performing real hard, going on TV shows and doing their little rallies for Kamala. And they've all, isn't it interesting how they've all raised their game so much in the last week or so?
Yep. Yeah, we saw a lot of fire and brimstone out of them, which clearly indicates that that's what the campaign told them that they were looking for. Clearly, the campaign said, look, we want Kamala to be the calm, rational, sane, top of the ticket, and we want you to go after Trump, the number 2 person to go after Trump. And they all went after Trump as part of their audition. Yeah. And you know, I think that I think it's just this, that the campaign really views like Pennsylvania as so critical. And I think that they took a long look at Walz, the Minnesota governor, because the poll numbers for Biden were looking pretty bad in Wisconsin and Minnesota. And they felt like he could shore that up. But then actually new polling came out that was good for Kamala, which hurt Walz's chances because they showed her with a pretty significant lead now in Michigan and Wisconsin and Minnesota. Really, Minnesota's over. I mean, she has like a 12-point lead in the Fox poll almost in Minnesota. So I think like that little panic that set in, like we need to take a Minnesota, Wisconsin person has dissipated. That went away. I think that the Beshear is an attractive candidate, but I think, you know, he was a little bit nervous in his appearances and not real smooth.
Yes.
And I think that the way they're looking at him is like, well, Beshear can help us make it closer in southern states, but we'll still lose those states. Right. So how is he really helping us? You know? And I think Mark Kelly, they just don't want to give up that Senate seat out of Arizona, and they're afraid they might lose it if they do. So I think that in Pennsylvania, there's a few things going here with Shapiro. Well-spoken, articulate, great fundraiser, will help shore up the Jewish vote, which has been a little bit shaky, a little iffy. And Pennsylvania is just like 50-50 right now. I mean, it could go, it's coin toss. And he just won his election big, you know, for governor. And he's very popular. And he's got the organization in the state to run a good race. So it just has to be Shapiro right now.
And he's very present, you know. People don't really talk about this very much. I've certainly learned it from relationships, you know. You're just not present. And I think this is something, I don't know if your wife's ever mentioned that. It's something that has dogged me my whole life. And I feel like Shapiro is so present. And, you know, this is something that we found with J.D. Vance. He is so unpresent. He's like, he's there, the lights are on, but no one's home. He's just kind of saying weird things and just like not really engaged and living in the moment and just, you know, full of anecdotes that are irrelevant. I'm going to play this clip of Shapiro now. Let's just see how present he really is.
Have you ever seen this guy? Like when he's on the stage, he like kind of meanders over, you know, can't really walk well, and he goes over to the flag and he like hugs the flag. I mean, I love the flag, but it's a weird thing he does, right? But while he's hugging the flag, you know what he's doing? He's ripping away our freedoms. That's what he's all about, because here's what I know. It's not freedom to tell our children what books they're allowed to read. That's not freedom. It is not freedom to tell people they can go to work, but they can't join a union. That's not freedom. It is not freedom to tell women what they're allowed to do with their bodies. That's not freedom.
Very impressive, isn't it? He really is opening the taps in that. And as you say, it's an audition piece. I mean, it's so frustrating as to how American politics really is very much like Celebrity Apprentice. We don't need a host. It's okay, Mr. T. But he really kind of let himself lean into this. Can we talk about his politics, though? Because, you know, he is seen as a moderate Democrat who can appeal to independent voters and shore up support in these critical battleground states. Would you say that politically they're aligned?
No, I think that he's more moderate than Harris for sure. But they're close. I think that, you know, what it came down to is like Bashir and Shapiro, what they are is they're good government Democrats. Yeah. And when I say that, I mean, they're policy wonks. They care about people. They care about policy that's going to make your daily lives better. You know, little things that aren't splashy, that don't, you know, translate maybe to TV. And I think the difference between the two people, and I love both of these guys, I think Bashir is like really, really great at getting into communities in his state and help. But as far as like being able to articulate to a national audience what he's doing and how it makes a difference, I think Bashir has a difficult time with that. And Shapiro doesn't. You know, Shapiro is able to, in other words, like, I think Bashir is very good in the minutia and in the weeds stuff, but I think Shapiro is better at the big picture stuff, you know, and making the case and national, taking what he does at the local level, state level, and bringing it national. I think that's where Shapiro has the advantage over a Bashir.
And he's younger. He's 51. Kamala Harris is 59, I think.
Yep, 59. You know, by the way, you know what Republicans are going to do? Let me predict to you right now
okay.
what they're going to do. Okay, his height. You know, this is what they're going to do.
Oh, is he short?
He's short. Yeah, he's short. He's like 5'6". Right. So
who cares?
And you know, yeah, but we know who cares.
Yeah.
We know who cares. We know MAGA cares. We know Donald Trump cares.
Well, Trump is 6'6" and 220 pounds. So
but
of
that's
course
what
he
they
cares.
do. I mean, they can't beat him on like policy and stuff like that. So
but they can beat him on height.
You're gonna see a lot of Josh Shapiro is short, little midget, little Josh.
Yeah.
This is what they're going to do, but it's going to turn off voters. So let them do it.
They don't realize that, do they? My wife was saying the other day, she's like, oh my God, have you heard what he's saying now? Trump said this, Trump said that, J.D. Vance. And I was like, good. Let him keep spewing all of this bile, because even Republicans do not like people that are vile, you know, people who are abusive and aggressive and just negative. It's the negativity. You know, Kamala's campaign, especially with the Beyonce soundtrack, it's so positive. And Trump really has retreated into this very angry, negative, miserable character who says that America is a failed state and the country is in a terrible place. And that's just not the reality.
Yep. I actually put that out in the tweet last night about because I had just watched a Trump speech and then I watched the Harris speech in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And it was just such a stark contrast in style and tone.
Right.
A whole Trump messaging and campaign and all of his rally speeches, it's America's going to hell. We're a third world country.
Yep.
The economy's tanking. World War III is about to happen. Everyone around the world is laughing at us and we suck. You know, and Harris's message is very positive and uplifting and empathetic and showing like and happy and joyful.
Which is what Obama did in 2008, right? The idea of hope and you know, change for the right reasons. And, you know, it worked for Obama. I feel like Harris is an even greater, because by nature of the fact that she's female and she has all this experience. I think this is a killer campaign. I really do.
And you know, you could go back to almost every presidential campaign, as far as you want to go back, and almost every single time, the candidate with the hopeful, optimistic message wins. Almost every single time. You know.
Yeah. Again, it's just.
You could go back. I mean, even Reagan, you know, against Carter. You know, Carter was a truth teller to a fault. And I've said this many times about Carter. Carter's biggest problem is he was too honest to be.
Yeah, he couldn't lie.
And this is a problem. You know?
Right.
This is a little bit of a problem. And so he would get on TV and he would go, look, man, you know, this is the deal. Like, things are bad here. And Reagan would just say, you know, shining city on a hill and everything's going to be great. And we're the best and we're number one. And look what happened. You know, this is almost Bill Clinton did the same thing in 92 to George H.W. Bush. The same kind of thing, you know, don't stop thinking about tomorrow, you know, whereas George H.W. Bush is talking about his time in World War II. And that was part of the problem we had with Biden. You know, really, to be honest with you, is that Biden on the stump loved to tell stories about his childhood. And he talked a lot about the 1950s and the 1960s. And I would go crazy. I would go, nobody wants to hear this.
No.
And thank God, you know, with Kamala, you know, we don't have that anymore. And it's no knock on Joe, but, you know, people just don't want to hear about 1960. They want to hear about the next 4 years.
Well, because 1960 was like 70 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I think people of that generation forget, like how long ago that was. Not only were these people listening not born, but their parents weren't born. And
look, we all know the boomers, okay? And our parents, but they love to talk about the 60s, right?
Yeah.
I mean, all boomers do, right? That's like the nostalgia, but you just can't do that when you're president, you know?
Let's continue in this vein about the weirdness and the negativity coming from the Trump side. We know that Trump installed Lara Trump as this RNC co-chair. She's posted this weird video of her filming herself drinking wine, and you can hear the kid crying in the background. Here's the clip.
The chair of the Republican National Committee, folks. Yeah. So, you know, here's what I want to say. This is a big picture about this, because when the Harris campaign decided that we're going to make this about weird, you know, that these people are weird. Donald Trump is weird. Vance is weird. The whole MAGA movement is weird. I was just like a kid in a candy store, because that's been my whole thing for 5 years now.
Yeah, mine too. I know.
My whole Twitter account.
Yeah.
I'm like, look, you can take any person's name you want and type it in my search bar, Ted Cruz, whoever you want, any member of Congress, and you're going to find me with a bunch of clips of that person being really freaking weird, right? So I have this monstrous, massive treasure trove of Republicans being weird and saying weird things and doing weird things. And now the presidential campaign for the Democratic nominee has embraced this as their campaign strategy. And I'm just like, rock and roll, baby, tee it up.
Yeah.
So I have decided that, look, I'm not going to call them weird. I'm going to show them weird in their own words. Because look, I've spent 4 years training for this. I'm ready, man. And so what I'm doing every night is I'm posting 10 clips of different people every night, not the same people, showing the whole country how wacky and weird these people are. And there is the chair of the Republican National Committee. Pretty damn weird.
Can you even explain that clip? I can't. I mean, I'm practically speechless. What is going on there?
She's doing two things. Number one, she's trying to promote Trump wine and the Trump candle, the grip. You know, this is
merchandise.
Eric, her husband, runs Trump wineries, which is in like North Carolina. I don't know. No offense to North Carolina winemakers, but That's not where I'm buying my wine from.
Yeah.
Okay. But that's where the Trump winery is. So she's doing, number one, she's trying to advertise Eric's products. And number two, she's trying to say like, hey, all moms need their alone time and need some decompression time. But again, as with all things Trump, like no one disagrees with that, but this isn't the way you do it.
Just pick your kid up and give him a cuddle, for goodness sake.
This isn't how you make that point. Right, exactly. So look, so I'm going to keep doing it every night. Turn into my Twitter account. You're going to get 10 new ones. I got 10 good ones for tonight. I'm already ready to roll.
Great.
And that's 100 days in a row. So the question is, if these people really aren't weird, there's really no way I could post 1,000 clips in over 100 days of weirdness, right? Different people. There's no way that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, there is no shortage. I went on a friend's podcast this morning, briefly as a guest, and he played a clip of me that he plays in his show regularly from months ago, where with my voice going, the problem with Donald Trump is he's not just dangerous, he's just so weird. Yeah. And this is the thing. It is. There is the weirdness goes hand in hand with the danger and the autocracy, and I'm sure the two are connected. As a family, you know, those family photos from years ago, it's all very weird. And now, you know, because I'm not someone to judge, but this is a very high bar.
Because weirdness attracts weirdness. Here's the point. The point is that, you know, if a Mitt Romney was president or a John McCain or a George Bush, they're not going to allow all these weirdos to have power and influence. They're not going to be up here on these pedestals with these audiences. But Trump has collected this island of misfit toys where there's all these psychopaths and nut jobs and weirdos have been elevated into the right-wing media, into the podcast sphere, into social media. These people are all stars, people like Cat Turd and Jack Posobiec and all these complete nut jobs that would have no influence or no sway in any normal era are now stars under Trump. So this is what I've been trying to show for 5 years, is that it's not just Trump. Yeah. It's all the people around him are weirdos. And why that's important is because if he wins, he's bringing all these people into the United States government at the highest levels.
Yeah. And then that really is the foundation of Project 2025. It's about personnel. It's about, you know, recruiting people with these extreme views and putting them into government positions.
Think about that toxic mix. You have these crazy right-wing policy ideas, and then you're bringing in weirdo nut jobs to implement them.
Yes. It's
can you get worse than that?
I don't want to wait to find out. I really don't. I want to talk about, we've got an interesting clip of Donald Trump talking about himself as an athlete. What is, because this is more weirdness, isn't it? Is this to do with golf? Is this to do with the Olympics? I mean, what is this?
He can't let the golf thing go from the debate.
Oh, right. About who had the better handicap.
He can't stop. Like literally, you don't know because you don't really follow him, you know, every day but like he has been ever since then. Yeah. He's constantly posting golf stuff, you know, his swing, and he's posting people praising his swing, and he's posting clips of people saying what a great golfer he is, like every day. And so, yes, in these speeches, like he just keeps talking about how great a golfer he is. And he used to talk about it a little bit before, but once that incident happened in the debate, then it's just nonstop now, where he's trying to prove he's a great athlete, which is just completely preposterous. And so really, like, there might not be a debate. We'll talk about that in a minute. But, you know, if there is, the perfect thing for Kamala to do is just to laugh in his face if he starts talking about golf, and it will bring the house down. I mean, the country will love it.
Here's the clip.
Like, I was always a nice athlete, a really good athlete, but I don't want to brag.
The other part is I don't want to brag.
Yeah,
right?
That's the funny bit.
Yeah, we all know Trump hates bragging. You know.
Oh yeah, would never
doesn't like to talk about himself.
Yeah. And then, so explain the stuff about the Olympics as well, because there's been a few posts here, and Donald Trump Jr. has posted as well, claiming that his mum was an Olympian, Czech national ski team, and as a kid we would be excited for the weeks leading up to the games, and now with the ever predictable and seemingly satanic to me drag queen opening ceremonies and never-ending BS, no one I know even thinks about it beyond maybe watching some highlights. It's such a shame that that event that used to create so much national pride now creates at best indifference. Using the games to push woke ideology has zero to do with anything the games stand for. Rather than highlighting the incredible accomplishments of these amazing athletes, corporate media subverts all their hard work to push leftist insanity. It's not only a sham, but a true disservice to some of the most talented and dedicated people on earth. I should get you to read these, because when I read them, they sound like public service announcements. It's very interesting. I had a theory the other day, which I'm working on it, so I haven't really polished it yet. But they talk about regular people, and those regular people, whether they be LGBTQ+ or straight or bi or who cares, like it's something woke and leftist rather than reality.
This is it. This is the point.
And, there are trans people, and there have been since time began. There are gay people, and there have been since time began. It's actually around 10% of the population around the world. But to talk about it like it's fringe is so weird.
But here's the way I can get you to understand their mentality.
Please, I need you.
Is they don't believe that. They believe that that people are being convinced now to be gay and trans.
Right.
That they're being brainwashed to think that they're gay when they're really not.
Yeah.
So this is what these guys believe. So when you start there with that mentality, you begin to sort of unravel their twisted brains. But that post there by Junior shows the disconnect between the very online MAGA fringy, Republican influencer type people, of which Junior is like the ringleader.
Yes.
Arguably like the top dog in that circus. And they get all worked up about stuff like this, about the opening ceremony, supposedly reinterpreting the Last Supper in a blasphemous way.
Yeah, except it wasn't the Last Supper.
Of course, there's a huge debate over whether they were talking about, the Greek wine festivals from ancient Greece, or whether they were talking about, I don't want to get in the weeds of all that.
The picture was not the Last Supper. It was not
the Last Supper.
They miscalled it. I think it was Laura Ingram who started it, right?
It was the usual suspects online, and then it filters out. So this is the disconnect, though, because the vast majority of the country has no idea what these people are talking about. They don't see any of this garbage. So when he comes out with this wild, crazy thing, most people are like, even Republicans who aren't very online MAGA, look at this and go, what are these people talking about? Like, I didn't see any problem with it. I thought it was fine, and that's number one. And number two, it's France, it's Paris.
Yeah.
It's the Olympic, like,
it's Europe.
What do you think? Yeah, this isn't Birmingham, Alabama Olympics, right? You're going to get something. You're not going to get like American Southern Christian Baptist opening ceremony, with a pastor up there saying a prayer. It's going to be artistic. It's going to be interpretive.
But does this go back to Alina Hubbard's Instagram that we were talking about last week, where this idea of perfection is connected to this far-right Christian nationalism, where they think that they are a perfect race? It also connects with white supremacy and misogyny. And so there is this version of humanity that they have in their minds, where if you're not tall, Josh Shapiro, if you're not white, if you're not male, if you're not evangelical, if you're not, all of these things, that you are in some way imperfect, and that they represent perfection.
Yeah, and a couple other points too. Like, what's the percentage of people in France who attend church every Sunday? Like 3% or something like that. It's not anything close to the United States.
No.
Okay, so other countries, they think differently. They behave differently. So you sit there and you're going to use like your values. And by the way, these are not Junior's values. These are values he's pretending to have.
Right.
that you're going to say France should conform to our way of thinking, even though they're the host of the Olympics. And by the way, can we go back to the first sentence of that, where he claims that his mother was competed in the Olympics? That's a complete lie. Okay. Let's just talk about that. Okay. Which is, where does that come from? This is family lore created by Donald Trump in The Art of the Deal. When The Art of the Deal came out, when of course we know that it was ghostwritten, but Trump gave some stories for it. One of the stories that Trump told the writer who went along with it was that Ivana was in the 1972 Winter Olympic Games on the Czech ski team. She absolutely was not. There's no record of her. This has been fact checked, everything. There's no record of her ever being on the team. She was a very good, by all accounts, youth skier as a kid. She competed in some junior events, competitions, and that's pretty much the extent of her ski career, right? She was never an Olympian. So it's sort of bizarre of something that's like so easily disproved.
Yeah.
That Junior is putting this out there, stating as a fact, my mother was in the Olympic Games. Because if his mother was in the Olympic Games, there would be photos everywhere. They would have 5,000 photographs on their walls of her in the Olympics.
But isn't this the same as Trump claiming that because his uncle went to MIT, that he's very smart himself? That's basically the same story, right?
Think about it. How does any human being go, my mom was put online to like 10 million followers, my mom was in the Olympic Games? When it's so, show me a picture of her in the Olympic Games. Why don't you you'd think you'd have one, right? Like it's such an obvious lie.
And also the Olympic Games is one of the most documented events ever. Right. You know, it's like they list all of the competitors, the winners, the losers, and everybody. It's the part of the deal. You get accreditation. I don't know. I just feel like it
shows you the weirdness and the psychosis that they would lie about something so obviously and easily disproven.
Well, because they know that people don't check. They have no respect for the fact that the people. Well, you do, obviously, but you're about to post 1,000 pictures of weirdos between now and the election, so you know they don't stand a chance with you. But they work on the assumption that low information voters are disengaged, and they might pick up a little bit of intel here and there on the grapevine, and if they can claim that they are some way related to a great Olympian, it gives them license to be critical of an opening ceremony. It's just so weird.
And with Trump claiming, by the way, that he was a great athlete, he even said this week he was the greatest high school baseball player in New York State in high school.
Of course.
Growing up. With those genetics, with the mom as an Olympic skier and the father as the greatest high school baseball player in New York in the 1960s, how is it that none of these kids are athletes? Like, I'm not like huge into eugenics and all that, but you'd think like out of 5 kids, at least one of them would be an athlete. None of them played any sports.
And they're obsessed with eugenics. I mean, Trump talks about it all the time. You know, very good genes. I see you've got very good genes. He's just talking about white people, basically.
He does.
Yeah, there's another white person.
So why aren't these guys great athletes? They didn't even play sports. You know?
Let's I've got a couple of other things. We have to finish soon, and you know it's a shame though because we could talk all day. But just explain about this. This is a post from Gunter Eagleman. Who is Gunter or Gunther? And why has he posted, men, don't let your wives ruin America. Make sure they are voting for President Trump.
Yeah, so, I mean, I posted that. I don't think that's exactly his real name. I think it's something else. But
Probably not, yeah.
A lot of them do that. But the reason why I posted that is very representative. Look, these kind of posts are all over right-wing social media, all over the place.
Yeah.
Which is basically, this is the theory. The theory is that, okay, now that there's a woman on the top of the ticket, and now that we have J.D. Vance saying all this shit about women, like, we got a problem. This is the mentality right now of them. We got a problem. And we know women don't like Trump already. So we know that we're probably not going to be able to convince women. You know, Trump's not going to be able to, Vance is not going to be able to vote for these guys.
No, childless cat ladies is not a good way to go about that.
So we're writing off the single women. we're saying, okay, we're not going to get them. Okay. But what we need to do is have the married men make sure that your wives vote for Trump.
Ah, yes.
And you need to tell them under no
you tell those
terms
wives
that they are going to vote for Trump, whether they like it or not. This is what they're saying.
Or they'll get no supper.
Or they'll get worse,
Yeah.
And it's all over the place. I could show you 100 posts just like that one from these people right now. This is how they think they're going to win the election. They're going to win the election by getting men to force their wives to vote for Trump.
I mean, this notion of forcing anybody to do anything, but especially a man forcing a woman to do something, just plays into the chauvinism, the misogyny, but also this dystopian kind of future that is very much inbuilt to Project 2025 and Trump's policies, that men have all the control over women and women are subservient, and that is the way that the balance needs to be in order for a successful society. They keep referencing this. They haven't said it directly, but what you're alluding to is that is now part of their messaging.
And here's the other problem. The other problem is they always told their people not to do mail-in balloting, right?
Yes.
They didn't believe in it before, right? But now they do. All of a sudden, they're embracing mail-in balloting. So, you could say, well, that woman is not going to listen to her. She might tell her husband, oh, yeah, sure, I'll vote for Trump. But when she goes in that voting booth, she'll pull the lever for Harris.
Right. So by getting her to do it at home, he can oversee where she's. Oh, my God, Ron, this is insane. This is the Handmaid's Tale.
That's what they're telling the men to do. Fill out your wife's mail-in ballot, right? Here, honey, sign here. Yeah, that's what they're saying.
This is so screwed up.
Yeah. So that's why I put this stuff out there, because I want to let everybody know what they're up to, And this isn't just like some one-off crazy one.
No. This is not baked in. This is baked in. Yeah. Okay. Finally, well, a couple more things. Penultimate item: debates. There's a little bit of backtracking going on now, and it seems like Donald Trump is backing out of the debate. They put out a statement effectively saying that, I'll read it out for our audio listeners, saying, given the continued political chaos surrounding crooked Joe Biden, the Democrat Party, general election debate details cannot be finalized until Democrats formally decide on their nominee. There is a strong sense by many in the Democratic Party, namely Barack Hussein Obama, that Kamala Harris is a Marxist fraud who cannot beat President Trump, and they're still holding out for someone better. Therefore, it would be inappropriate to schedule things with Harris because Democrats very well could still change their minds. And it's signed Stephen Chung, who is Trump's campaign communications director. We should not normalize the language in this press release, should we? Nope. This is dated July 25th. It sounds like it should have been dated July 25th, 1876. I mean, what are they thinking?
So, of course, this is, probably the most obnoxious Trump spokesperson, Steve Chung.
Yeah.
Most abrasive, who issued this statement. The funny thing is that this statement blew up, of course. It was reported all over the country. Trump is backing out of the debate with Harris, right? So what does he say? He says, oh, this is a brilliant strategic move because I was able to get Barack Hussein Obama into national media again. And no one's used that Hussein name in a long time in national media. And I was able to put that out in front of the American people, as if anybody gives a shit about that anymore.
Yeah.
They didn't then.
No.
They didn't work then when they tried to use that in the campaigns before against Obama.
The only person that was upset by that was Saddam Hussein, which is the connection he was trying to make.
A little side note, but look, this is what Trump does. When Trump really doesn't want to do anything, but he thinks like, well, I kind of have to do something.
Yeah.
He'll put it out there and check the reaction. And this is what he's doing right now. He doesn't want to debate Harris. He wanted to debate Biden, but he does not want to debate Harris. And so he puts this out there saying, with this equivocal language, like, we're not going to debate. But I don't think he's completely. I think what it is if he gets a big backlash where everybody's calling him chicken and calling him a loser and all of that, then he's going to change his mind and he's going to do it. Okay. And I think that's why it's really, really important in these scenarios. If you want to see a debate, and I know you don't,
I do not.
But many do.
Yeah.
That Harris is taunting him now. Harris's every speech is taunting him about this debate. So
it's the defendant and the prosecutor. That's why people want to see.
But this is why he will debate, because he can't let that go. If she let it go, if she said, okay, fine, we won't debate, then there wouldn't be no debate.
Right. But she's now saying she's going to be there whether he's there or not.
He will now do it. Correct.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Man, it's so weird. Okay, final item, and that is Ronnie Jackson and Eargate, because Donald Trump has appeared without the bandage on the right ear, and miraculously, there seems to be no sign of a wound or a suture or anything. And so now that kind of almost confirms the fact that when he was wearing the maxi pad, it was all for drama and performative. But Ronnie Jackson, who, as we know, was not really a real editor, he's not a real doctor. He was Trump's White House doctor. He's now put out a letter saying effectively that, well, I'm a doctor and I say that Trump was shot in the ear and therefore he must be.
That's pretty much what he says. Right. Exactly right. Dr. Ronnie. So here's what the crazy part about this is that Elon Musk, Donald Trump, the whole crew, everyone on the right is obsessed with this topic. Yeah. Like the left really, like we had our fun with it for a few days.
Whatever.
And we don't even think about this much anymore. But these people, it's 24/7. They are and not only that, it's not important. This shows you their weirdness. It's not just that they want to prove and insist that everyone believe that Trump was injured in this incident, that he actually was injured. Okay. And I can accept that something nicked his ear and caused some blood. Of course, I'll accept that. I'll stipulate that. And I know many of my friends watching this don't even agree with that. But for purposes of this argument, I'll assume something hit his ear that caused him to bleed. Okay. But it is incredibly important to Donald Trump and to MAGA for the public to believe his ear was hit by a bullet. Yes. In other words, not something else. Like, that is hugely important to them. And they're having congressional hearings on this now. And, we got Ronnie Jackson putting out letters. You have Lindsey Graham demanding that the FBI issue.
Well, because they think they can win the election because of it. They think if Trump is a martyr and he got shot, then that's an election win.
They think this is how sick they are.
Yeah.
They think that this is the absolute key to winning this race, is that if the American public believes that his ear was nicked by a bullet and not a piece of glass, Trump wins. That's what they think. And that's why they're so obsessed with this topic. And the best thing Democrats can do is just laugh at him and say,
let him
why is this important to you again? Like, why does this matter? And they're complaining also that the media does not continue to cover this and continue to talk about it. Like, oh, this has just gone away. Well, how many more times? Everyone in the United States knows about this. Everyone saw it. How many more times do you think, if you're going to show it to people 100 times, then Trump's going to win instead of 20? Yes, they do think that.
I have a new theory, by the way, on the ear bleeding thing.
Oh, I'm not sure if I want to hear
it was a hangnail. It was a hangnail on Trump's hand. He's whoa.
Look, okay. Anything's possible with these people.
Anything is possible.
Anything's
he said possible. He said it sounded like a mosquito, so maybe it was just a mosquito bite.
No, he said the biggest mosquito in the history of the world is what he said. Because everything has to be the biggest and the best.
Because he does know. He knows more about mosquitoes than anyone. Anybody.
His uncle was a professor at MIT.
That's right. So he gets the knowledge.
Mosquitoes.
Yeah. Okay. Listen, we have to finish, but great fun and very informative, and it's so nice that we can do both on this show. He's Ron, I'm Anthony. If you'd like to hear more from Ron or read more of Ron, of course, he's Twitter, at Ron Filipkowski, and that's what he's going to post 1,000 times between now and November with some extra weird stuff. You can also read him on MidasTouch.com, Midas News, which is our news feed where all the latest stuff is at the top, the biggest stories. It's the best place to get your news. You can find more from me on the 5-Minute News channel and, wherever else in the internet. We'll come back next week at the same time, Wednesday. If you want to download the audio podcast, please do that. Later tonight it drops, and you can rewind and share the show as soon as you like. Ron, thank you. See you next week.
You got it.